Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what is our very first session in our series of Your Voice, an open Q&A with Whitey. And if you didn't get the gist of it, that's me. I'm Whitey. Hopefully, you're ready to sit back and enjoy the next 45 to 60 minutes as we talk through the questions that you want answered that are happening in the marketplace. And of course, the first thing we must do, of course, is to thank our sponsors who support us. And without them, many of these things aren't available to be delivered in the manner of which we do. So we're very, very supportive of our sponsors and thank them so much for their assistance and work that they do with the FBAA. Just to give you a bit of a heads up, and before I welcome our guests into the forum this morning, bear with us. I mean, this is the first one, and as we've all gone through a change of lifestyle, a change of work style over the last 3 to 4 weeks from everyone working at home. There's a huge drain and huge pull on technology and data. So apologise for any initial teething problems, and I guarantee you that if there are any, we'll get through them and we'll fix them before we do next week's session as well. So get back and relax and enjoy. Now, there's a very important thing that you need to do with these series. You need to make sure that you're comfortable sitting in a lounge, that you got your cup of coffee ready. This is all about sitting back, relaxing, and listening to conversation. So have your coffee ready to go. And hopefully, if you're lucky, like my dear good wife, she's also giving you something to eat for morning tea. So make sure you're prepped and ready for it as we go through each week, that you got something to eat, cup of coffee, relax and enjoy the conversation. So for now, what I want to do is to introduce my guests this week, and each week our guests will change. And today, I'd like to welcome Leah Renwick, who is our State Manager for the East Coast of the country, and Mark Windrum, who is now our Manager for the East Coast, or State Manager for the West Coast and Central of our country. Welcome, Leah and Mark. How are you going?
Hi.
You good?
I'm great.
Mark,
just dandy.
Just dandy. Good, eh? There's a comment I haven't heard for a long time. Well, welcome, guys, and glad to see you looking very relaxed there, Mark, in Western Australia. That's good to see. Good to see. So, first of all, I might just get yourselves just to introduce a little about yourselves and what you're doing. And what I might do is, firstly, I'll throw to Mark, and we'll do this before we get into the questions in a minute. The interesting thing with Mark, he joined us on the 23rd of last month, just as we went into lockdown. So he's had a very interesting journey with the FBAA, maybe a cushy intro than what most people would get to a new employer they work for. But Mark, do you want to give us a little bit about your background and how you found things over the last few weeks in this unusual environment we're in?
Well, I guess it's an interesting word, journey there. I was like, but that didn't happen actually. So it's going up and down the stairs of my home. It was the massive journey that I had during my employment at FBAA. But look, what it's really done is open up some really good opportunities. I contact with as many members as I can. I found that really beneficial as a new employee at the FBAA, just being able to talk to as many members as I can. Obviously, lots of reintroduction. The fact that I dealt with a large portion of the West Australian and broker network in my days. 7 years I was BDM at Keystar in total. So that's where I am in the industry, and really love that. Really found the passion was for assisting brokers as much as I could, and to transition to a broker company like the FBAA, more of it as an association. It's just a dream job for me so far. But definitely different to what I thought it was going to be in the first few weeks.
Yeah, I think we're all in that same boat, Mark. We had many things planned for you when you started, and we just shelved those for the time being whilst we focused on other things. So thanks for that. And I think it's important to understand that Mark also looks after South Australia and Northern Territory as well as the Western Australian market. So he's got a pretty big footprint there to fulfill. And it was important to us because I'll throw to Leah in a moment, because Leah has had the country or her arms wrapped around the country for many years now. And as we've gotten larger and larger, it's become a very difficult task. So we needed to bring some more manpower, pardon the pun, in to assist Leah with all the great work she's been doing over many, many years with the association. Leah, I'd be interested in a bit of feedback as to what you're hearing and seeing in the marketplace. I think everybody knows you, and be interested to see how you're seeing what's happening in the market.
Well, I definitely hope our members would know me by now, heading into 10 years this year. So it's been quite a fun journey and an interesting one, to say the least. Look, a couple of interesting market updates, I guess, that we're hearing from our side of things at the moment is there's a lot of talk around SLAs with lenders at the moment, and quite a few lenders have unfortunately had some SLAs blow out, primarily because their offshore teams are now moving onshore. So a lot of companies have had to really realign their businesses and adjust to being back onshore in Australia and having the right credit teams in place here as well. So that's been probably a very big hurdle for a lot of lenders, as well as what we've said with the industry as well. There's been quite a few restructures happening with companies. Unfortunately, for the business development side of things, we've seen close to 63 BDMs stood down or been made redundant from their position at the moment, and that varies from asset right through to the residential team. So there's been quite a lot of structural changes in 3 weeks that even I'm not used to. I think, Pete, we've had a really good lengthy conversation about it as well, that we didn't really see this shift in structures with the GFC. A lot of people held their jobs for a lot longer. So it's been some trying times, and now obviously we've come into this week where there seems to be some settlement issues coming up now with people that have gone to the JobKeeper and the job seeker payments. And now there is a lot of talk around settlements and how that's actually going to affect it from a lending point of view at the moment. So they're all things that I know, Pete, you've been working very hard on as well. So it's answers that we obviously don't have same day, but it's stuff that is definitely getting worked on in the background of things.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Leah. I mean, you're right with all those things, and that's probably a very good segue now to jump into some of the questions we've got here. And I guess just to let everybody know, we have been inundated with questions, and we're never, ever going to get to all of them unless we spend all day doing this. So I apologise if your question doesn't get asked, but what we do aim to do is, because we're doing these every Thursday, 11:30 a.m. right throughout this COVID period, we will roll those unanswered questions into next week and try and get through as many as we can. We'll keep progressing through all the questions we get. As we do go forward, though, there'll be very specific questions that will come through for our certain guests that come in that have a specialist area. So, for example, in a few weeks' time, we have AFCA joining us. And so I'm sure there'll be plenty of specific questions to be asked there. So we'll deal with those as we go. So let's jump into the first question, because and we'll look to see how we can best answer them for you. So I've got one here from Cameron. We've been told since some time, since the Royal Commission, that the bank cannot extend interest-only payments due to responsible lending implications. This appears not to be the case, despite all the banks not willing to extend unless it is a new application being made. Mark, have you seen any of this as yet, given you've come from a lending background? Are you seeing anything over in the West around this?
Well, not really at the moment. I haven't really had too much of the feedback from the members I've been speaking to, because I mean, I left the lending background and everything was hunky-dory, so it was pretty. So I'm not really too sure what. I'm trying to actually have a bit of a catch-up with my ex-work in the next few days to see what's happening. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting time.
Leah, what's your take?
From my side of things over here, it's the same as Mark. There's not a huge amount of feedback coming through on it at the moment. We, privileged also behind the scenes, there's another group called BDM Voice that runs as a social media chat group, and we've had some conversation around it in there. We're waiting for a lot more lenders to bring out policies and updates and changes from their side as well. And obviously, as they go, Pete, I'll share them across with you, which will be shared out to our members as well.
Well, I guess, thanks, Leah. From a more regulatory and legal position, I guess, in relation to that question, banks can extend interest-only repayments under responsible lending obligations. It's just got to be justified as to why it's done. But that's different from I guess, a point of law versus credit policy. And credit policies change between bank to bank. And we saw it, was probably close to 2 years ago now, when there's almost no interest-only money available at all. But the responsible lending obligations doesn't prohibit it. You just got to justify why, and it's got to be appropriate. It can't be unsuitable, and very shortly we'll have to measure against the best interest duty. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. All right, well, thanks, Cameron, for that question. We'll go on to Jeff's question. This one's a bit tricky. So Jeffrey's asked us, in 6 months' time from now, what would the state of the property market be like? Stable, going up, going down, and then also in 12 to 18 months from now. Now, I can tell you now, none of you two, and neither am I, are an expert on the property market, but we have experiences, and I guess that's something we can talk from without coming from a point of expert on this subject, because we aren't. It's not our gig, but it is an interesting point to look at. There's various commentaries happening in the media about this. Leah, have you seen or heard anything in regards to a feel on the property market in the coming 6, 12, 18 months?
Interesting one at that. So and again, personal sort of background on this one, I have a good friend of mine who was looking at buying a $2 million property up here in Brisbane. They had finance out sitting with a lender at the moment. They actually pulled out of that purchase on Monday because they've got concerns that there will be implications to the Brisbane property market. I'm lucky enough to have originally come from Sydney, and talking to a lot of my BDM colleagues that are still down in Sydney and in Victoria as well, we are starting to see a smaller shift happen, and a lot of that's around desktop valuations being done rather than on-site valuations. I would hope that there wouldn't be a major flow on, but I mean, obviously coming off the back of pandemics and things like that, it's something that we've not ever really been through in this particular market. So I'd like to hope it's not going to have a huge impact, but my heart tells me it will have a minor impact on what we do.
Okay. What about you, Mark?
Well, it's a bit of a kick in the guts. The Perth property market was just starting to rebound after quite a low period in the doldrums. Many periods of the recession in the property market, and just getting some 0.2% increases in the median house price, and then COVID hit. So the next report will probably be positive, and then it might just start to drift again. But again, from a personal point of view, my father was lucky enough to settle on his property that he bought down in Mandurah, which is about 70 k's south of Perth, and that's been absolutely shocking. He had his property on the market for at least a year, and it settled the week before COVID really hit. And we've had many conversations about just how lucky he's been, because otherwise it would have been another 12 months on the market for sure down there.
Yeah, I know. I had a conversation, did a recording with Peter Switzer a week or so ago now, and we're talking about the property market. As Peter's show is predominantly focused around that and the economies, and looking at what the impacts were. And both of us are getting a bit old and grey in the tooth over the years, so we're sort of reflecting back on what we saw in the through the 80s, 90s into the GFC period. And I recounted to Peter that I can't remember the amount of recessions I've seen in this country. I used to be able to set it off my watch. It would roll on a normal dial, and you go into recession, pull out, the property markets would flow and move with it. And obviously the GFC, as Leah touched on before too, was something different again, and not the same. But when something impacts the economy, then and people wind up with unemployment rates, and if we hit a 10% unemployment rate, for example, which has been pushed around, and the drops in the economy of the country and so on, that's going to pull property prices down. And there's some benefits, if you like, or some upside in that. It doesn't help the people that have already got properties, because your value is going to drop, and hopefully it doesn't drop too much, as Lee was saying. I would guess there could be anything upwards of a 10% drop in property values. But that's something that we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully it doesn't go that far. But what it can do is, for first home buyers, assuming they've got a job, and we've got to balance all that into the equation in these times, because it's a tough gig. But if they are gainfully employed and that's continuing, and yeah, they were just on the cusp of looking to buy a property. They didn't have quite enough deposit. If the values come down a little bit, maybe they don't have enough deposit to actually get into the marketplace. And that could help then stimulate those economies within that sector as well, and speed up market recoveries. But I would be very surprised if we didn't see a contraction or reduction in property values. Hopefully it's not much, but everything hangs off the back end of how long are we in this thing for. And none of us know that. And what we can see on the news at the moment is that maybe our recovery is going to be a lot quicker than anticipated. I know from the FBAA's point of view, I've been working on the fact we're going to be in this until October and maybe to the end of this year. Currently, you might say, well, that may have been too conservative, and we might be out of this by August. The winter months for us are going to be challenging as far as the coronavirus is concerned. So we just got to wait and see how those plays out. But the quicker we get out of this, the quicker things recover, and that's for sure. And economists, and including the World Bank and so on, are all saying that we should have a pretty sharp recovery from this. So hopefully that stops from property markets from going too far south. So look, the next question I've got is from Justin. Can you see government or regulators assisting further to stimulate the banks to go and do more, like relaxing policy, or to inject more money in the economy? Well, I'll grab that one to start with and say they're not going to relax policy so much. Well, not that I see, and this is my view of the world. Whether or not they inject more money into the economy, I would say there is plan D, E, F, and J somewhere sitting out the background that, you know, if we keep going further south, then they will look to do more to inject money in the economy. I mean, I don't think there's any government in the world that's intentionally going to let their country collapse economically unless they can't hold it by some means. So I would suggest that they would have a preparedness somewhere, and I have no inside information on this, so I'm not talking on behalf of anyone, but I would imagine they'd be prepared to. And my conversations in the last couple of weeks with our regulators, there has been an announcement made by ASIC in regards to some of the policies they've been looking at, but they made no comment on anything to do with the Royal Commission outcomes and recommendations that are being worked through. So best interest duty being one of them. And the comment I've had back from both ASIC and Treasury is basically around, it principally says, well, if it wasn't named, it's business as usual. Yes, at the same token, there are certain pieces with government, which is the best interest duty, of recommending that that be slowed down. We have put a paper in that says we want to see it basically put on hold for 12 months. So it's the Combined Industry Forum. And I suggest most are in a similar boat because of, the first priority at the moment is to deal with the needs of business and the clients first, bringing in new regulation. And the best interest duty is not something anyone's against, but you've got to make sure you've got to be able to implement it effectively, and do it in a time when you're not distracted with something that no one in this country, unless you're around from the beginning of the 1900s, has been through any sort of pandemic like this, complicated with the economic downturns it also creates. So it's a very unusual time, and it's important that if we are going to look at any kind of new policy or regulation, we're given an appropriate time to get away from this period to be able to do that. So I've had quite a few questions come through on best interest duty. And so that is the response from the regulators is, well, at the moment it's business as usual, but it is with the government. The concerns have gone to government to say, slow this thing down, put a handbrake on it. And we're really now waiting for government to respond as to where they stand on that. And this also goes with what we call DDO, the design distribution orders that are being looked at for product manufacturing. We want that slowed down as well. They're probably the two key pieces at the moment that have been considered or been put forward. So we're in a watch and see mode just at the moment as to how that goes. So let's have a look at something else here. What else we got? So, so we have a question here from Sasha saying, how can we access the full information on all the different lenders, COVID packages, for individuals and the 250,000 business loans. And then another one from me saying, is there a list somewhere regarding which lenders are participating in the government's schemes? So I think there's a bit of public information on it. Now this is a test now for both Leah and Mark. Where can you get that information from, people? Leah?
I knew you'd do that. So coming very shortly, guys, is something that I've worked on pretty extensively over the last 2 weeks to put together an entire lending list of hardship and where you can go, like the websites you can go to for your clients and obviously yourselves to get more information on. So I'm aiming, without any more hiccups happening this week, to have it available by Monday at the very latest. It's obviously going to go peak first. When that's said and done, it will be available through the members area on the FBAA website. So you'll be able to log into the members section and you'll be able to grab that information and use it as you see fit. On the subject of a list of SMEs though, haven't started it, but I will also add that into the compilation of available contact lists on there as well.
Okay, I'm going to give you an 80% mark on that. It's not 100%. You take a shot, Mark.
Well, I'll certainly be referring to the members section of the FBAA website to download that information to make sure I've got it on hand for any queries that we get.
Okay, you're in the same sort of bracket. So here is the pot of gold to this answer. All this information, once it's gathered, will be available in our broker support program area of our website, which is freely accessible by anyone, not the members area. So we're going to put all this information. If you look on the homepage of the FBAA's website at the moment, there's a tile which has our new logo branding for our business support program. And there is also in the drop-down menu across the top right-hand side of the website where it says About. When you drop that down, the first section also takes you to the business support program. And in there will be all this information. Leah's list, there's already a whole host of information there. There's also links to all the government and regulatory information that's being put up. And that should be there no later than, if it's not there by now, probably another hour or two today. There's constantly populating more and more information in that. And this is prior to Leah's information coming through. But all the links to the government schemes and all the information that we have available that's been given to us by government is on our website, or will be very shortly in the coming hour or two. I better be careful not to overcommit our marketing people on the time frame. So you guys, you're right, there's a little bit extra, but it's only new news and it happened yesterday, and yesterday had its own tricks involved in it. So it's getting everybody up to speed. So that's where you're going to find it.
Well, the information is rapidly evolving. You know, ever since we've got the lean pitch added to over and over and over again. So it is well worth checking that.
Yeah.
Couple of days just to see if there is anything else on there for sure.
Yeah, our business support program page will be updated daily. There is so much information coming through, and obviously Leah's been working for weeks on compiling this measure that she's got. That will go up there. But there is information coming through all the time. It gets rather exhaustive, and you're right, Mark. Literally at this stage, on a daily basis, there'll be something new going up, and that will continue to be the period, because a part of that support program is blogs and imagery and assets for social media, video content, and that will all be evolving and changing every month as well. So something new will be up there all the time. Thanks for the promo, buddy. Oh, I've just got a message come through saying that information's up already. Well, happy days. There you go. Excellent. So I've got another question here from Dale. What issues are others having with AFCA? Well, I'm going to park that one and say I already have AFCA agreed to be with us. I hope I got the date right, on the 30th of April. So it's Thursday, the 30th of April, 11:30. AFCA will be with us. You'll have the opportunity to put your questions through prior to that. Remember, you've got to register for each week of these because we've got the questions and so on that are relevant to various speakers. So each week you just need to get in and register. And you'll be able to have specific questions for AFCA at the time. One thing we've got to remember when we do this, and we're talking to people like AVCA. Fingers crossed, I'll hopefully have ASIC with us as well, not too far away, as well as all the other guests we've got. We need to be respectful to the regulators. We can't get too harsh on them. I have been dealing with the chair of AVCA as well as the CEO of AVCA and a couple of their key leading ombudsmen in our sector, trying to work through the issues I know we've all been having. But have a think through that, come up with some good questions, and get prepared for that one on the 30th of April. What else have we got here? So Trish has asked, as a new broker, how can I generate business in this current situation? Will the market improve? And then Heather's come in as well, as a new broker, would love some advice on how to find clients while self-isolating. Well, I guess means to generate new business, part of our business support program. So my first response is go to that business support program. There's actually a blueprint as to how to work with clients and so on. It's a best practice model. And it's been specifically generated by an expert in our industry, and it's really, really great content. So look at the blueprint in the broker support program. But in regards, and the market will improve. There's no doubt of that. It's a question of when, and it's not tomorrow. So we're going to be in this for a little while yet. But how can I generate business and advice to find clients? Leah, you've been in the game, God, for forever. I'm surprised you haven't got grey hair. Maybe it's been covered up. Leah, what have you got any thoughts on advice to find new clients whilst we're self-isolating and generating business? And then Mark, I'll come over to you as well.
Yep, and truth be known, I don't have grey hair. Yes, I dye it, but no greys come through yet. But working with you, Pete, it's only a matter of time. So look, for generating new business, there's been some strategies I've been working with some brokers on in my local area. So what I found is that things like Facebook have local chat community groups and things like that. And the one thing I've noticed about the area that I live in, there's been a lot of questions that have been put up by small businesses lately as to a broker that they can talk to about their finances. So I think it's really important to become familiar with social media. If you can find any local area sort of chat rooms, become really engaged with them, be involved in your local community. And I think the most important time at the moment, and the one thing I've noticed about, again, my own community, is that we've become very supportive with small businesses. So going and making sure that once a week we have dinner at one of the local restaurants, which is by takeaway. So Snitty Night usually happens Wednesday night. It's Snitty and Beer Night for one of them. And Ravel does their own beer. So they manufacture craft beers and things like that. So you can can your own craft beer and take it home with you as well. But going and introducing yourself to some of your local businesses while they're going through times like this and letting them know that they can talk to a broker, because there are packages available for them to keep them afloat during the time as well. But I really think it's important that you do get engaged with your local community at this point in time, because it is going to stimulate their growth as well. But reach out to your family and friends. Your biggest support network as well for business is family and friends. So let them know that there are things that you can talk to them about. And we've spoken on several webinars now about repayment holidays and making sure your family and friends actually understand the repayment holiday side of things as well, because there are 3 different packages out there now. So COVID hardship and your standard repayment holidays. But a lot of people, and even I knew with my own friends, didn't understand the differences in all the payment holidays and what it actually meant for them. And the fact that in some cases it can freeze redraw. So there's a lot there that the consumer believes they know, or they believe that they can walk through the door of the local bank, but the local bank doesn't have the amount of information that our brokers do. So I think it's really important just to reach out to people that are close to you at the moment.
All right, thanks, Leigh. Mark, I won't ask you for your comment. I'm going to ask you something different if I can. Now, folks, you should, or you may or may not be aware, but there is the ability to ask questions whilst we're in the middle of these sessions. It's only a limited amount because we've got so many other questions to get through, but I have had a question come through, and I think it's a good one, Mark, that I'll throw to you to answer, because you and I spoke about this yesterday. It was, the question is, do you think lenders will give any support to customers who are on a fixed rate home loan, especially ones on high fours, and waive their break costs, etc.? What do you think, Mark? I know we can't talk on behalf of the lenders, but what's your thoughts as a past lender?
Look, I guess I'm a bit of a punter as it is, and that's exactly what going for a fixed rate is at the end of the day. And unfortunately for people that are stuck in the fixed rates, it's just something that they've got to look at the economic costs to those rate fees. So, you know, that should be worth it in the long run to take any of the actual lower fees, so the lower rates. It's a real tough one because there are some pretty sharp actual interest rates out there, but when you actually have a look at the comparison rates for those 2.2 fixed rates, they're actually quite high still. So I think the actual fees on top of the fees actually might not be economically sound as it may on first look.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And hopefully everyone can hear Mark okay. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm getting a bit of breakup on the conversation, so apologies there. It might be just that distance trying to get over to Western Australia. It's a long way away. Normally, we've got to get people to stamp their visas and passports to go to Perth, but maybe the signal's having troubles. And hey?
You do at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough at the moment. That's right. Nobody gets the gig. All right, thanks for that. I've got a question here from Leanne about how can the FBAA help brokers diversify to survive post-COVID-19 when financing is anticipated to be taking a dive. I guess, with that, partly is our support program, our broker support program that helps there. We also have our member benefits area, so there's a whole host of member benefits that'll help you with diversification. As opposed to financing taking a dive, I guess it will whilst we're in the COVID period. But once we come out of it, I expect things will correct rather quickly. Leah or Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you can go, Mark.
Go on, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're calling a lady there, Mark.
I haven't actually met you in person yet, Leah. But look, I guess one of the things that people are stopping getting financed right now is that people might have a job that is still continuing. You know, it's not in one of the affected areas or anything like that. The actual confidence that the clients have at the moment, that's why they're kind of step back and seeing, what's actually going to be happening in 2 months' time. So that's what really is the pipelines that people have at the moment. The wait and see approach, which a sensible approach as well.
And just from my side of things, I guess for our members, reach out to our national sponsors. A lot of them are in the diversified space for what they do. Through the SME asset side, we've got guys that do private lending as well. There are a lot of webinars going on out there at the moment. And I think I said to Pete last week, I was webinared out by the end of last week. But there are a lot of great webinars going on at the moment from a lot of the SME asset side of guys that are teaching brokers how to diversify into that space as well. So, jump on board as many webinars as you can fit into your day if you really are invested in diversifying your businesses, but also, jump on our website, have a look at the national sponsors, click on the link, and all of them will take you out to a BDM that can help you through your business as well.
Excellent, good advice. One of the things I have been asked a few questions on is the age-old classic on what's happening with clawback. And this is one that our industry has been haunted by for a long time. We fought it through the Royal Commission. I fought it post the Royal Commission. I fought it just before December. And unfortunately, at this stage, clawback's not changing. As it's been recommended in the Royal Commission, the clawback situation is not changing from what we know it to be. Even though I'm completely against that, and I will continue to fervently push against that being the case, because it's just fundamentally wrong. It always has been in my books, but I'm actually doing a research piece, or started a research piece at the moment, to justify why clawback should go. Because there's certain commentary that's been made by government or politicians and also regulators around that I don't think is a fair and reasonable apples with apples comparison. And so the clawback issue is certainly not off my table, but from the government's point of view, they've basically said bugger off. But we'll keep pushing that one, so I reckon I can make this one right. There was a piece in that too within the clawback questions I've got here, because there's about 8 or 9 of them. I think it was around the net of offset position. The net of offset position in regards to how that's already known today is not going to change. So that will continue on as is as well. The other question I've got is there any news on, and this is from Vanessa, any news on broker trail still to be reviewed from July? It's 2022, so it's 3 years from the federal election. That is still happening. So that review, the 2022 review of broker trail, it's not just trail, it's whole commission structure. As per the recommendation of the Royal Commission, has been directed to be undertaken by the ACCC and the Council of Financial Regulators. And I dare say 12 to 18 months out, they will begin the work on that particular piece. And it's already planned and strategized here today. I do have, I have had conversations with government around the manner of which that review is done. So the review will happen, but the manner and the emphasis of it may not be as what was expected, because government has said many, many times they don't want to see destruction of the mortgage broker sector. They realise its value in the marketplace and to consumers and borrowers. They're all behind us, and we're very thankful for government to have that position. That review will still happen, but the emphasis of it, we've been told, will change. And basically, if we're doing everything right, we're doing the right thing by our clients. When best interest duty comes in, because it will come in, but it's a matter of when, we act in accordance with that, where we're not breaching responsible lending obligations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then we should come through that fine. I don't see that we won't. So I think it's just one of those things we've still got to go through. It's there, it's not going to change, and it is what it is. We will get to the other side. Let's get to another question. We've talked about property markets. So we have a lot of questions here, so I'm just getting through what we can before time beats us. I have a question here in regards what happens if we get a change of government in the next federal election. Do you think Labor will pursue their policy of nil commissions? Well, and this has come from John, so it's actually a very good question, one that gets asked all the time. And also we've got, it gets asked all the time, so I've got another person asking the same thing. And that the stance that Labor took as we went through the Royal Commission wasn't nil commissions, it was an all up front. And it was roughly the average up front and 3 to 4 years trial, all bulked up into one piece at the beginning. The big problem was that through the discussions and conversations we're having with the non-major banks in particular, was because the difficulty in funding it for them. So they don't have the balance sheets that the banks do. And the banks could probably do it, even though they wouldn't be happy to do it. It's not mission impossible. And that's how the current upfront and trail model is today, is because technically an upfront and trail, when it's all pushed together, is what you're legally obligated to be paid. It's just from a pricing structure that pushes interest rates up. So to try and balance it all out, it was made so that you got a part now and a part over time, but legally you're entitled to the lot. So Labor took the position, as far as I'm concerned, of pushing it all together and saying, you get it once, you get it all up front. It created some issues, never went there. The other thing to remember is that the Honourable Bernie Ripoll was the Labor minister who was the architect behind FOFA, which basically is where Labor went, so freedom of financial advice. It wasn't at a cost. And I've heard secondhand through viable sources that his position was that this was applicable to the financial services market, so financial planners and the like, but wasn't done with the intent or thought of it being further afield than that. So life insurance, mortgage broking wasn't on the spectrum to introduce a FOFA style arrangement. So if Labor got in at the next election, and I'm very privileged to be on a committee now with the Labor government up here in Queensland, and have very good contacts at high levels within their federal parliamentarians. I think we're in a pretty good footing to have an informed and well-considered debate when that time comes. And I don't feel that it would be something that would be going through another radical change. The whole discussion on remuneration for brokers in this country actually started back late 2015 when Kelly O'Dwyer announced there would be a review of remuneration on home loan lending for mortgage brokers, which resulted in report 516 being produced by ASIC in March of 2017. And then that backed into the Royal Commission. So, you know, the review in 3 years' time means our broker commissions have been under scrutiny for 8 years. And that's just unacceptable. You know, I don't think Labor would want to turn around and create a market storm over that, because, you know, I know the first thing I'd be saying is, well, brokers don't get paid commission. The foot's off the head of the tigers. Banks will do what they want, and up goes interest rates. That's the end result. Consumers miss out. First home buyers would be a big loser in that conversation, because they'd have to pay a fee to use a broker. And given what between 55–60% of all mortgages are originated through brokers, they'd almost be cut out of that opportunity because they're struggling to put a deposit together in the first instance, let alone another fee on top of it. So I think we're pretty safe there as we go forward.
Well, I think just on that, trail right now is more and more justified as ever during this period. You know, there's going to be clients that are being, you know, calling up their broker at the moment, and it's a phone call. That's what people are earning their trail. It's also keeping a lot of the broker network off the JobKeeper allowances and things like that as well. So it's such a thing for the industry, and it's more and more justified the longer that we go through COVID as well.
Yeah, that's right. And you're exactly right. It's keeping people off some of those government assistance programs over and above the fact you're entitled to it anyway. That's why we went to fight as soon as we went into this mode and spoke to the ABA, and we led that conversation about making sure that regardless of what happens to people, and if they take a government stimulus, brokers' trail will be continued to be paid, which was agreed that that was the case. So it was a good result. I have a question here from Eric. It says, how can we answer the question, has the applicant's income position changed since the time of application? So that's obviously a part of the credit process. And I'll be interested in your guys' response. But my first response is, you got no choice but to answer it honestly. And I don't know if it deviates much from that. And I know that has consequence, but we all got to remember that the lender has the right to pull out of a settlement anywhere up to, you know, the day before or at any time if circumstances have adversely changed and people may not be able to make their repayments, or something's happened and it no longer meets the credit policy. But Mark, given your background in lending, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, it was always a killer when there was new information in between formal approval and settlement where something happened. Nothing's changed in that time. You know, it's something that has to be disclosed for numerous reasons, and it is what it is. If the person doesn't have the capacity to repay anymore, then, you know, the loan has not settled. There's always that part of the clause that says, hey, we can withdraw at any time. You know, we have issued an approval, but that's it.
Okay, good. Leah, I've got one from you because I know how close you are to so many of the BDMs and the brokers on a wide street. You've been doing it for so long. Question from Elizabeth is, are there brokers out there actually still writing new business? And if so, what sort of business are they writing?
Yeah, so luckily enough, you're right. There are quite a few, and there are quite a few BDMs on this call now, and that have been keeping me amused by text in the background. So Look, there is new business still being written. There are a lot of purchases. A lot of it is refinance stuff at the moment. And I think probably the biggest fold in all of that is refinancing, because the consumers do have more time behind a computer at the moment. They are looking at rates and whether or not they are on the best deals that are out there. Just to follow through though with the settlement side of things and the previous question, look, times are a little bit different now as well. The duty of care is that you have to disclose. So if your client has lost their job between application and settlement, yes, you need to tell the lender, and you need to encourage your client to tell you that as well. It is falling under the responsible lending side of things. It does fall under, consumers' best interest, that you actually do it. But there are also some instances at the moment that there are lenders letting settlement go through, but what they're actually doing is putting the clients onto a repayment holiday straight away. So they're acknowledging the situation that they're in, but making sure that settlement still does take place on a lot of the deals as well. It's just a case of talking to your BDMs and understanding what policies apply for each lender that is out there. But there is definitely business out there to be written at the moment. It's just a matter of being patient and understanding that things may take a little bit longer to get through in the climate that we're in.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I got a question here from Jason about who's the best person to speak to, or specifically looks after equipment finance brokers. And I would just suggest, Jason, if you've logged in, send me an email and I'll put you on to the people in our CAMS committee, which is our commercial asset and equipment area, and I'll get someone to contact you. So shoot me an email. It's an easy one, pwhite@fbaa.com.au, and I'll direct you to the right people to speak to on the equipment finance area. I also have a question here from Leanne about considering where the world economy is headed, should we be telling clients to fix now? And this is a tricky question to answer. And my first response, and although I've been in this industry, I think this is now my 42nd year, it's no wonder I got grey hair, is that, this is always a tricky one to answer. To me, to give guidance to a client on whether they should or should not fix a rate is very much subjective to their individual circumstance, not necessarily what's happening in economies and so on. And I say that because if they're looking to do a renovation or put in a pool and they're still going to do that in the next 3 to 6 months, you don't want to be on a 3 to 5 year fixed rate, because to modify that contract could cost you a fortune. But Mark, I mean, you're again being close to the lending sector for all these years and the brokers that you speak to and where Mark's moving at the moment. Where do you see that in these sort of times?
Well, it's where do rates go? This is the issue. I mean, we're right at the official rate of 0.25. I mean, it can't really go much further down. But that's what I said to myself 3 months ago, and then all this hit. So it's if you think logically about it, there's not much else where it could go. But logic's kind of thrown out the window in the last month. So who bloody knows?
It's certainly uncertain times and uncharted waters, that's for sure. So it's a tricky one. Leah, you got any further thoughts on that?
Look, I'll go with personal circumstances on this one. I actually got my partner to fix his loan 2 weeks ago. So it's look, it's a case of personal circumstances. He was offered what I believe was an incredible fixed rate, 3-year fixed rate with his lender. And it just came down to circumstances and what sort of plans are ahead for the next couple of years. With your client's circumstances as well, I mean, the age-old question as well is when you do an interview, how many women don't tell you that, if they accidentally fall pregnant in the next 12 months? If, family planning, if they're planning on going on a world trip, things like that, and, marrying it down to circumstances rather than what's happening in the world economy, because none of us know what tomorrow's going to hold, so.
Yeah, well, it's again, I think we're pretty resolved. In fact, it still comes down to individual circumstances, and then make the best decision you can then, because it's uncharted waters. There's a way not to answer the question, isn't it? I've got a couple of questions here, one from Jeffrey and another from Michelle around CPD points. So the first one is, and I'll answer these, is what's the expectations on CPD points for the year? unchanged. There is that much online content at the moment. I reckon you triple your CPD obligations through the year without even thinking about it. Sorry, Michelle, it's stay the way it is. And Jeffrey asked the question, why am I not able to register my CPD points in the FBAA website? And all I've got manual log records. It's a good point. And Jeffrey, look, over the years, I've introduced a couple of platforms to automate this, and they just either haven't been taken up by members, or alternatively, those companies didn't exist going forward. I am currently in the ways of negotiation of a new educational platform for the FBAA, if it gets the board approval. And it's being discussed at this month's board meeting, actually, which will actually fully automate that and integrate into aggregator systems and platforms as well. So if I get the green light, we will have an automated capability for these to be logged in, and probably way before we get out of the COVID period, because the system's already operative. We're looking to take it over. So hopefully that answers that. I might come back to that one. Let me see. So I've answered the question on the best interest duty. There were a few questions around that. So if anybody has any further queries around that, let me know. Pete's asked here, is there any delay in the start time? Well, as I mentioned before, there's not. So here's the timetable. According to both Treasury and ASIC, that this is something that hasn't been given any direction to change outside of business as usual. So that means in May, and one hopes it's early May, but it only says May, we should get the regulatory guide from ASIC on the best interest duty, which then will lead into an implementation of 1 July this year, assuming nothing changes. In that time, and the reason why we haven't done anything at this period of time is because the formal regulatory guide is not out yet. We'll then conduct a series of educational webinars, if we're in this mode still, around how to comply with the best interest duty as we know it once the regulatory guide's out. Because any education or any formal style of education and trying to structure your business around it until we get that, respectfully, is pretty much a waste of time, because you don't know what's going to change and twist until the RG's out. So we've done nothing on this as yet, as far as training education is concerned, but outside of the communications we've had with all our members. The formal training will start once we know the RG's out and we know the timeframes we're working with, and we will then run a series of webinars for everybody to be completely across what is happening on best interest duty. And it's a weird one too. So it's interests with an S. It's not best interest singular. God knows why they do that. I stumble over it all the time. But yeah. Well, we're getting very close to the end of today's session. I will finish with this one. It's from a good mate of mine from your side of the country, Mark. And Surinder always asks me this question. He says, are you okay, mate? And I'm going to give a twofold answer to this, and we'll finish up after this note. I'm not, but I am. Just so you're aware, unfortunately, my mother, who was 95 and a half, passed away yesterday lunchtime. So it's been a bit of a difficult day yesterday, and still a bit this morning as we sort things out. So in that respect, I'm not. Another respect too, she had a bloody good innings. If I can live to 95, I will be so friggin' happy, it's not funny. So we're dealing with that. But otherwise, yes, I'm okay. And thanks, Surinder. He always asks, he's a good mate. But anyhow, we're going to finish up there. I'd like to thank very much both Mark and Leah for joining us. Please thank them and appreciate that. So we'll give you a virtual clap. You can't hear it or see it, but anyhow, you got it. But thank you very much. I do appreciate you being with us today. There's some great questions there. Any questions we didn't get to, we'll roll over to next week. And next week, we will have another special guest. So joining us next week, and it's not Mickey Mouse, but it is close to it, Alex Brujak from Prosper, Head of Partnership. Alex is another great friend, a lovely man, has got so much to tell us and inform us. And we'll have a chat to him about a lot of these questions here, some of the ones we didn't get to. If you've got specific questions for Alex, you need to re-register and ask your questions, because he's all across the SME funding space, right? So you probably have a lot of questions for Alex, and he's a great man of a wealth of information, and he's also a great joy to talk to on anything. So I'm looking forward to that. So join us next week, same time, same day of the week, and we'll speak with Alex then. And as we finish off, thanks again to our sponsors. With the sponsors in our marketplace, everybody's behind us. It's great to have them backing us through this period. It's difficult for them as much as it's difficult for everybody else. So thank you to them, and we appreciate their support. And as we close, what you'll receive shortly over the next hour is a little feedback survey. We want your feedback, and I know some of the voice quality's been a little bit in and out, so I apologise for that, but it's different signal strengths, different areas, and all that sort of stuff, but we'll do our best to sort that out. But we'll also give you a code for your CPDs, because all of these sessions CPD valued content. So you get 1 hour of CPD. Make sure you log it and register it, and join us again next week. Make sure though you have your cup of coffee ready before we start, and something to nibble on, and relax in the lounge. There you go. Mark's got it. Where's your cup of coffee? It's there. Yeah, I knew it would be too far away. Oh, look at the mug. My God. And join us next week for an open Q&A with Whitey. Enjoy. Thanks.